For people outside of religion, they tend to view religion as superficial. They view it as not spiritual. They think that it's just superficial explanations of the Creator and the world based off of their cultural and traditional backgrounds. I used to be one of those people, and I've since learned that's entirely untrue. There is a deep spiritual side to religion, particularly Christianity, that I've been blessed to learn through the full revelation of Jesus Christ. I have also learned this is a very typical thing within Christianity when people practice their faith with even the smallest amount of devotion. In all honesty, whether or not you're Christian, another religion, or no religion at all, believe there's no God at all, you are going through spiritual experiences whether or not you know it. If you've seen any of my other videos, you probably know that for most of my life I was an atheist since I was about 12 up until about 28 years old. And I had personally gone through a number of spiritual experiences, which I'll touch on a few of them here. And despite those experiences, I still denied there was the existence of the spiritual side, denied the existence of God. And one of the first experiences that I remember, it was quite interesting because there were multiple witnesses to it. So we didn't see an apparition or anything, but my sister had her friends over and they were in the living room, and we have 2 dogs, and they were typically mild-mannered, and everyone was just having a good time in the living room when all of a sudden both dogs from different angles pinpointed a certain spot and were barking very aggressively at it. And it caught everyone off guard. There was no one standing there that we could see or anything. And they were both baring their teeth, growling, barking, snapping even, especially one of the dogs who was extremely mild-mannered. It was very out of character for her. And it really threw everyone off, but there was a very strong sulfur smell, something that most everyone there smelled, and within a minute, the smell dissipated and went away, and the dogs all of a sudden calmed down. And I later learned on that smell is attributed to dark spirits. And it was just a very eerie experience, especially with multiple witnesses. Really gave a testament. We had other experiences in that house. One of them, for example, was it was a 2-story house. My mom and I were home alone together. We were on the bottom story, and all of a sudden we heard a loud thud. And both startled, and so we went upstairs to examine it. And above my parents' headboard, there was this giant acrylic cased image. It was very heavy, and it fell off onto the headboard. And okay, that makes sense. It's a big, heavy image, this and that. Maybe the cable broke, maybe the hook broke, maybe the nail came out of the wall. So we got up there and went to examine, and we both noticed the cable was perfectly intact, the hook was bent perfectly, and the nail was in the wall. So the only way it could have moved is if it went up, out, down. No earthquake or anything. And we both noticed that, and we both acknowledged it, looked at each other, put it back on, and quickly hurried out of the room. No logical explanation I could think of for that. There was definitely no earthquake. Nope, nothing. Another time in that same house, my parents had seen their father-in-law, or my mom's father-in-law, dad's stepdad, at one point, which was eerie. But I personally was sleeping one night. I had a German Shepherd at the time, and woke up in the middle of the night. And she was standing on the bed, and she was growling, looking at the door. And that's weird. So I tried to calm her down. She wouldn't listen to me. I had a fan remote, so I turned on the light from the bed, and I saw a silhouette, a silvery silhouette by the door. Kind of freaked me out. And you could say it was a dream, but the physics felt eerily real. And there's another part in a second here. So the light was on, dog was kind of aggressive. She was growling, just really low key, but still watching. The silhouette walked forward and approached me, and then just touched me. And then I fell back asleep and thought it was a dream, right? I woke up and the fan light was on. So that was definitely not a dream. And I had some other experiences, not going to get into all of them, but I still denied the existence of God in an afterlife. I just thought, I was an atheist, thought that, we just go in the ground and we go into nothingness. So fast forward a number of years, it was 2019, my wife and I had been married, we had our first kid. I had a terrible cough and cold one night, and we usually all slept in our bedroom at the time, and I really didn't want to keep everyone up, but I needed some sleep. So I left that room and went into the spare bedroom we had. It was the kids' playroom, and so we had a kitty get on it. And out of habit, we usually latched to this and that. It wasn't auto latching, so it was easy. So I got up, went in there. I vividly remember I latched the gate behind me out of habit. And it's not something that I just stopped doing, because I did it every single day, every time I went through that door. Went in bed, laid down, and then went to sleep. Shortly after, in the middle of the night, I woke up, and I was laying down on my back, which is kind of unusual for me, and I looked to the door, and there was this dark silhouette, a very dark one, more than just physically dark, but it was a dark spirit, and it was staring at me, and I couldn't move. I couldn't scream for my wife. I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed, sleep paralysis. And then I watched it put its hands over the kitty gate, unlatch the kitty gate, open it, and walk in. At this point, I was deeply terrified. I was paralyzed in sleep. This dark creature was coming towards me. And I had other spiritual experiences that I couldn't deny, that even though I tried to bury them, they were still there. And it approached me, and it had a sinister grin on its face, and it just reached out, touched me as well, and I fell back asleep. Could say it was a dream, right? Pretty logical. Well, again, the physics felt real. And then when I woke up, I took a deep breath, was able to move, pretty much leapt out of bed, and I walked through the open kitty gate. The kitty gate that I knew I had closed. The kitty gate I watched it open. So that one really struck me. Still held my atheistic beliefs, but it was definitely something that happened I couldn't deny. And so that was part of my spiritual development to becoming a Christian, because it was a lot of understanding the dark side. That silver silhouette was probably a good spirit, but I didn't know enough at the time, and I don't know who it was or anything. It was just a weird thing that happened. So that was just a lot of the spiritual that I had gone through prior to becoming Christian. And so, again, if you'd seen some other videos, you know where I'm going in the next minute here. It was about 2022, 2023, my great aunt died, and long or the short, I got some family Bibles from her. I definitely felt the Holy Spirit working, because one of them was a version I was looking for, and it was from her husband, who he had married in with some children, and none of the children wanted it, even though it was his from 1952. So I took them all home, because I wasn't going to let them go to an estate sale, and I just set it on the bookshelf for a long while. And eventually I got to the point I was awake one night, everyone else was asleep, and I definitely say by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, I went and picked it up. I'd always wanted to read the Bible from page 1, and it was definitely, I'd say, a holy inspiration. I just kind of just did it and started on page 1. And I started reading through it, going through it all. Had a leap of faith that I went through with a friend, where I was trying to get through Genesis and wrap my head around Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, and some of the other stories. And so he said, just sometimes it takes a leap of faith, even though it's not a science textbook. Some of that stuff's allegorical, not literal, but he believed it happened. And there is a lot of evidence, especially with Noah's Ark and the book Daughters of Eve, mitochondrial DNA and stuff. There's actually a lot of evidence supporting it, but I learned that all after the fact. So I had started reading the Bible, and I was starting to get into it. And I realized, because I, at this point, through another series of events, I had gone from atheism to agnosticism, recognizing there is something that we call God. There's an order to the universe by a creator. So I was more open at this point to the concept of God. And I was reading through it, and I was starting to understand more. And I started realizing, no, this God is the God. There's too many warnings, too many parallels from thousands of years ago that are still relevant today. It can't all just be made up. And so I was reading it all, and I was starting to basically become a follower of the God of Israel. Hadn't gotten into Jesus yet. And some weird things started happening in our life. So my wife and I had a really big fight one night. We were trying to put the boys down for bed. It was a bit of a struggle, not uncommon with little kids. And yes, I was getting heated and escalated with the oldest. I started yelling. It was nothing I'm happy and proud about. But I closed the door and everything, and I was trying to deal with it to get him to cooperate. Wasn't working. But my wife, she was over with our other child next to her sister who lives with us. And she said to her sister, like, said under her breath, because she was hearing everything, and she was keeping a pin on it all, or monitoring it. And she had this thought, and she said, he's hitting him. I've never hit my son. I don't want to. I have no desire to. And I still have not and don't plan to. And even her sister, after we talked to her about all this, realized she's like, no, he hasn't hit the children. He wouldn't hit the children. But my wife grasped, she didn't say this to her, but nonetheless, it was a thought she had that we learned later on. But my wife acted on those feelings and went over and started literally trying to kick the door down because it was locked. And then I swung the door open, and we were both irate, yelling at each other, yelling in each other's eyes. And I had a sort of, not out of body, but out of spirit experience, I would put it, where while we were yelling at each other aggressively, looking into our eyes, I was like, this isn't us. And not just this isn't like us, but this is literally not us. Something else was going on. We do not have that level of anger with each other, or generally at all. And I could see in her eyes, like you can see the eyes are the windows to the soul, and it wasn't her. It was weird. So we separated, as in I went to a different room. I went to the garage and did something and cooled down. She handled the son, cooled down. And then probably within 30 minutes came back together, and I apologized, she apologized, and she's like, she noted that she was triggered by something. She didn't know what. She wasn't Christian at all at that point. She was still apprehensive with the God of Israel. But it was definitely a sort of level of possession, as I would put it in hindsight. I haven't talked to my priest about it, but something we've learned through getting into the faith is there's levels of possession. And sometimes it's just for a moment like that. Sometimes it's prolonged. It varies, but it was weird. And so it was definitely the enemy trying to get under my skin, because when I was trying to cool down in the garage, all I was thinking was, or the thoughts in my head, I should say, because the enemy can imprint thoughts, is I'm trying to be a better man, I'm trying to be Christian, trying to follow God, and I'm just like the people that I always talk crap about for so long. And that was really getting me down, but what else do I have to lose, Just the sky's the limit, let's just keep going. And it definitely felt, in hindsight, like the enemy was trying to get me down. He wasn't trying to make me deny the existence of God, just trying to make me think I wasn't worthy of God and worthy of trying to amend my life. So I continued this. I resolved, I was like, I'm still going to continue. I'm going to try. I'm going to see what's in the Bible. I'm going to continue this development. So it stopped for a little bit. But my wife, again, while she was still agnostic, one day texted me while I was at work. So my second son, he would nap in our bed, and she put him down on our bed next to the pillows, of course. And she texted me she heard footsteps in the room, but she went in and no one was, he was still asleep. Obviously no one else was in there, no animals. And it was weird. She heard audible footsteps. They even came through the monitor, she said. So she closed the door, and then a few minutes later, he woke up screaming. And so she hurried in there. And like I said, he was put down by the pillows. And yeah, he moved around, but from what she could see, he was screaming. He was towards the foot of the bed. The direction of the sheets indicated that he was like drugged, and he was pointing down at his ankle. And she right away thought he was drugged down the bed. Got no other explanation. There's many dark forces. We've continued to have weird things happen in our household, especially recently. And so that was a pretty pivotal moment, and for me realizing, oof, this guy's pissed. The enemy's pissed. And I kind of had a feeling due to some family history that there might be something attached to us that might be going generationally from the male side of my mom's lineage. It definitely seemed to be focused on me when one morning I was getting ready for work. And so everyone else would be sleeping in the other room, in our room at the time, and the kids had a playroom. And we just left the door open for the playroom. It was always kind of a mess, but whatever. And I was on my way out, so I was doing a last bathroom break. Walked to the bathroom, the kids' room on my right side, and I saw that dark silhouette. Yet again, I saw it out of my peripheral. I was in no way, shape, or form confident in confronting this entity, but I was questioning if I saw it. But when the hairs on my neck were so stood up, I knew it was more than just an optical illusion. Went to the bathroom, hurried my butt straight out to the kitchen again, and took some time. And then I went over and looked directly in and turned the light on. No silhouette at that point. Nothing in there that looked like it could have been an optical illusion. I even turned the light off and I stood there looking at different angles. Nothing at all. Yeah, that little booger, it's been bugging me, but it seems to be gone for a while, comes and goes. The closer I get to God, the more he likes to mess around. It's all right. Right now he's just twisting doorknobs. See what happens. I was getting ready the other morning, and I was in our bathroom, and I heard the doorknob twist. I looked, kind of freaked out for a second, opened the door. Wife and son were asleep. No one had opened. No one tried it. But I just shrugged, and at this point, I'm a son of Christ. I know that he's got no power over me, so I just shrugged and moved on with life. But going into it some more, so that was part of my spiritual development. My wife, if you've ever seen some of my other videos, she started, when I was going through my journey, she, through a conversation with a friend, started going on her journey. She was raised Catholic and she wanted to go back to her Catholic roots. So she started researching the Rosary, something she was unfamiliar with, but she knew enough about it that it existed, of course. And within a week, she was praying the Rosary every night. I had no idea what the Rosary was. And I was still in the Old Testament, no idea of the Blessed Virgin. One night she came out to me, and she, at this point, she was trying to make it work. She was trying to learn a bit of scripture. She was trying to do the things. I could tell for her it was still kind of superficial. And then she came out one night and from the bedroom, and she said, "Babe, I smell lilies." I was, okay, that's Mary's flower. And I saw it click in her eye. So Mary had paid her a visit. We have no flowers in the house, no aromas, no wax melts or anything. So I knew it was genuine. There was no joke about that, no messing around. I saw it click in her eyes. It made sense to her, and she just dove deep into it. And I was still apprehensive about the Rosary and Mary. I thought Mary's for girls, Rosary's for girls. But then a few months later, in April of 24, I finally obliged my wife's advice and let her teach me. And so this was one of my more positive spiritual experiences getting into the faith. She taught me how to pray it. I woke up the next morning, started praying the Rosary. I thought I was just going to pray a bunch of Hail Marys and have no experience. I didn't think an experience was in the books for me. I just was going to pray a bunch of mindless Hail Marys meditating on the life of Christ. Well, within 3 Hail Marys, I was sitting there crying in the arms of Mother Mary. I felt her sweet, warm embrace. And I just continued on through that Rosary, just talking to her, praying, and I undeniably felt her presence. Like I said, I went into it, I'm just going to pray some Hail Marys. I had recited prayers with the family before. It was kind of mindless to me. I wasn't a fan of it. Just figured it was going to be the same thing. You don't just cry through vain repetition. And not everyone has that experience. My mom had a similar experience when she started joining us in our journey. She had always had a faith at a certain level, and she started getting into the Catholic Church with us. And she started going to this Rosary service that was before an 8 a.m. Mass. So she'd get there like 7 and pray the Rosary as a group. Although she, being a little new to the faith still, she separated herself and she was just in a different area of the pews all alone. And she said she smelled roses out of nowhere. She was kind of in shock. She looked around, no one was around, no flowers, no perfumes or anything about. Okay. She just prayed, "Hey, Mary, if that was you, can you just kind of let me know?" So she closed her eyes and started praying some more. And as she described it, it was an injection of the scent of roses up her nose. It was undeniable. Pretty much made her jump for a second. So she knew Mary was there with her. And other times she said it felt like Mary would make her rounds. Like she'd go to my mom and my mom would smell her, and then she could almost smell a trail. It was interesting. I still haven't gone to those Rosary services, but I'd like to. But we've got kids, so there's that. And so my mom, in this experience, because she might have been a little apprehensive of Mary, I don't know. She never fully expressed that, so I could be wrong on that. But she opened her eyes in a way, and she saw the way the tiles were on the floor. They were kind of pointing, as she said, and the way she was sitting and everything, call it a coincidence, if you will, was pointing her towards a crucifix. And the message she got was, "I will lead you to Jesus. I, Mary, will lead you to Jesus." I saw my mom's faith life take off after that. So those are some very beautiful spiritual experiences we've had. My family was blessed to continue growing this relationship with the Blessed Virgin as she led us on towards Jesus. My wife gave me a book on Mary. I refer to it as St. Louis de Montfort taking us by the neck in this Protestantized world and dunking our heads straight into the ocean of the mysteries of Mary, rather than tiptoeing around. And I fell madly in love with her. She's a beautiful woman who's definitely spiritually led my family and I so deeply into the faith, and I'm so thankful. And so as my relationship with Mary flourished, I was praying with her and got so brazen to ask for a sign, a vision, or something. And one day I was on YouTube, again, call it a coincidence if you want, and I learned about Mary under her title, Our Lady of Sorrows. For some background, there's different Marian titles. There's Our Lady of Sorrows, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady Endurer of Knots, Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, all sorts. Some of them are based on apparitions where Mary visibly appeared to people and delivered messages from heaven. There are others that are more devotional. Like Our Lady of Guadalupe, she appeared to Juan Diego, 12th to 14th century, something like that. And that's when the entire Central Americas really took off with Catholicism after the missionaries had been struggling to gain conversion. So that's an example of an apparition with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then Our Lady of Sorrows is more devotional. Came from around the 1200s with the Servite order, who had a devotion to the sorrows of Mary. So getting back to it, so I saw this YouTube video on Our Lady of Sorrows. It really intrigued me. It was the gist of the devotion is being devoted to Mary's 7 sorrows, consoling her in her sorrows that she went through during the life of Christ, primarily during the passion and crucifixion of Jesus. As a mother, watching her son scourged and crucified unjustly and condemned to death is a very sorrowful thing to consider. And so I had some history with depression, suicide. I really liked heavy metal music. So perhaps that had an influence on me in terms of the kind of the zeal of the dark aspect of her sorrows. Not like satanic looking, but just that it was reminiscent of some emotions I've had in the past. So I researched a little bit. And I was like, this is really cool. And I was really excited about learning about this devotion. And so I learned about the 7 sorrows of Mary in a Rosary. It's a series of praying through her 7 sorrows, meditating on her 7 sorrows to help spiritually console her and take some of the sorrows and go through her with that. And although she is in heaven, so she doesn't experience any sorrow anymore, but nonetheless, it still gives her a consolation in that she loves in heaven to have people meditate on her sorrows, and it brings us all closer to God through her. So I woke up the next morning, similar situation. So I'm going to pray the 7 sorrows. Didn't have the beads for it, so I was just using my fingers. You can do that to count. And had some meditations with it and everything. I sat there and I was praying through them. I honestly expected just meditate and maybe have an experience. I don't know. Didn't know what was in the cards, and I was just planning to just go through it and see what happened. I wasn't really focused on having any spiritual consolation and events, so to speak, but just wanting to go through and meditate on this. So I was going through, and it starts with the beginnings of the life of Christ in his childhood, and then it gets into the crucifixion and everything. And as I was going, I was getting more emotional with it, and my eyes were getting wet, and it was getting really, really intense. I felt like I was there with her. I was feeling it with her. I actually, even at one point, started feeling literal pain in my heart. Like it hurt. In my opinion, you don't just get that reciting repetitiously in vain. And so there was definitely some grace flowing through me for a short time after that experience. I'd say a couple days. Even my wife noticed. She said that you're so much better with the kids right now, and because God's grace helps us in so many ways. And I was very patient. I was doing really good, if I must say so myself. But it was by the grace of God and through the Virgin Mary. And it was definitely a beautiful experience that I had, and it was fantastic. That's all I have to say. As harsh as it sounds in a way, feeling your heart hurt, it was just that feeling the spiritual side. It's like actually living and thriving in the spiritual side. Something that, again, like I prefaced in the video, I thought it was all superficial stuff, but no, there's like a deep spiritual aspect to all this. And so jumping off that, I'll get into another thing that happened to me. It's during Adoration. So we Catholics, we have this it's a practice of veneration, worship, I'd say, called Adoration, where we adore the Blessed Eucharist. It's where we sit there and stare at the Eucharist, which is the cracker that we receive in communion, as I would, again, crudely put it. But our parish, we're very blessed with having a parish that has a chapel with perpetual adoration. 24/7 you can go and adore the Blessed Sacrament. So what is the Eucharist? It's more than just a cracker. It is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. I'll put a link in the description below for Eucharistic miracles. There have been a variety of Eucharistic miracles where the Eucharist is actually bled, turned into flesh. It's been tested and found when it's been tested when it turned into flesh. The flesh has been tested. It was sent out to anonymous atheistic doctors, or actually doctors that we didn't even know their religious background, and they determined the flesh came from cardiac tissue. Someone, I can't remember the blood type, AB positive or negative, I think, but basically the receiver, someone who can receive all blood types, just like Jesus receives us. The cardiac muscle showed extreme signs of stress and distress, some like Jesus experienced on the cross and in the scourging, and a variety of other things. But again, link in the description below. Also, if you're getting anything that you're really enjoying about this video, please look at my other content, like, share, subscribe. I'd really like to grow this channel and get the word out to others, so I appreciate the following and all the support. So getting back to it, So we adore Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, which has his body, blood, soul, and divinity. It's not necessarily a safe space. Demons are still present. That's another topic. So I had never been. My wife had gone, and she had a beautiful experience. She actually was praying before the Blessed Sacrament, asking for more joy in her life, for herself to be more joyful. On her way home, she was behind a vehicle, and the license plate said, "Joy." Coincidence? I think not. And mind you, we are in Idaho, where we don't have a lot of custom license plates, unlike other states like California. So that made it even more interesting, so to speak. So she encouraged me to go to Adoration, and so one day I went, took my son with me, and thought I was going to stare at a piece of bread. I had no idea. And so I just went in, and she taught me some respectful practices. Don't turn your back to the Eucharist, face Jesus and everything. So got my son situated, make sure he was okay. Thankfully, our parish priest has some cool little toys, saint toys, that the kids can play with quietly. Very thankful for that, Father Brady. So got my son set up, and I knelt down and was staring at the Eucharist. And I wasn't baptized, confirmed, nothing at that time. And I was awestruck, staring at a piece of bread. I could feel Jesus' love for us. I could feel just an overflowing love of him as I adored him, something that I was struggling before as a non-baptized, struggling to love and accept Jesus as the Son of God. And I just felt his presence deep in my heart and my soul. I even wept and had other just prayerful inspirations and everything. You don't get that by staring at a cracker or a piece of bread. So after all this, it was time for me to become Catholic. When we started going to the Catholic Church, I actually reached out, it was probably April of 24, to the deacon in charge of OCIA, which is receiving people into the church to become Catholic. And he said that sign-ups start usually July, August, and the program starts in August, September, sometime like that. And to reach out, to follow up then, but he would make a note of me. And so some time had passed, and of course, naturally, I worried, I haven't seen anything listed for it. Maybe it's filled, and maybe he forgot about me. I was worried about that. I'd been working at this for a better part of a year at this point. I was just sitting there working. I didn't say anything out loud, and I went to reach for my phone, thinking I should email him real quick. And this voice said, "Don't." It wasn't an inside thought. It wasn't an outside voice. It was, again, like I said about earlier with demons imprinting thoughts. It was a don't. That's weird. Okay. Maybe it was just in my head. I reach again. Don't. At this point, I wasn't really overly familiar, even though I had some experiences, so I wasn't overly familiar with demonic activity. So I was thinking, is that you, Jesus? Why would you want me to not go through it? And it was twisting in my head. No, you should wait. You should wait till next year. Trying to logic around this and that. My mom was also wanting to go through OCIA. I was like, no, you don't want to take time away from her. Let her really focus. Okay, doesn't make sense. And weird. This probably went on for a week where I just was like, okay. Another aspect to it was have faith. Do you really have faith if you're going to follow up and you don't have faith that he's going to remember you? You don't think that the Holy Spirit will work through him? Have faith, trust. It'll be okay. If he doesn't reach out and it gets filled, then that was because it wasn't meant to be. In a sense, it kind of made sense. But this went on for about a week, and I just accepted it. I was quiet about it. It's also kind of a thing like, no, don't tell anyone. Don't tell your wife. No, you don't need to tell anyone. Keep it your little secret, our little secret. Okay. And then one day I finally broke that and told my wife. And she said, no, that's not God. God wouldn't keep you from the sacraments. The sacraments being confession, the Eucharist and communion, baptism, etc., confirmation. God would only want to bring you closer through the sacraments. He wouldn't want to keep you away. And I was kind of dismissive. I was like, no, I'm pretty sure, I'm confident in this. And then I thought about it. And I was like, no, she's right. And then out of nowhere, just the veil was lifted. My mind was clear. And I reached out and went through OCIA and everything. And my mom even said, she was like, I didn't tell her this experience, but she said that I'm so glad to go through this with you, which I didn't realize how much of a blessing it was for us to go through OCIA together, to be baptized together as mother and son. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience with the way the demons work. And the reason I learned after that, God permits certain things to happen to help build us spiritually, help us grow closer to him, even if it's a weird push like that. demons only have the power that God grants them. So he doesn't necessarily will bad things to happen, but he permits things to happen in accordance with his will, like, allow certain things to happen. And does he want someone pulled away from the sacraments? No. But for me, it was a good way for me to learn what demonic activity looks like, learn to take counsel from others like my wife and priests, etc., and to learn more of how he operates, how God operates, how the enemy operates, learn more of how all of this works. Because the spiritual side, it's the invisible world. You're constantly discerning when you hear things and think things and see things and coincidences of what's going on. But it's part of the spiritual life. And if God doesn't give us the opportunity to not love him, then we don't have the opportunity to actually love him. So it's a very complex way that God works. I hope I did it justice. I hope I didn't lead anyone astray with anything like that, with what I just said. But it's a quick Cliff Notes version trying to explain how he works in that regard. And I was blessed as we went through this process to receive very spiritual consolation and also some desolation, where God pulls back grace to see what we'll do when we don't have grace. Because it's easy to be a follower of Christ when you feel his love showering down upon you, but what about when it's not there? And then you really have to pull yourself up and get through it all, but you still have to be faithful. And so I went through various things, lots of things, small things I would say. Mainly felt like the Blessed Virgin was really helping me develop into a better person, a better follower of Christ. And so through the sacramental prep process, I was really close to Mary. I was praying with her a lot, just receiving a lot from her and just relying on her and just trying to work with her in the invisible world, the unseen world, the unheard world, so to speak, and just really trying to navigate this spiritually. And so, as I said, I was very dependent on her, so to speak. And the enemy hates Mary because Mary is the one who crushed his head with her heel. It's why a lot of imagery has the serpent under her heel while she's crushing it, because she was free of sin, she was conceived free of sin and sinless for her whole life. So the devil has nothing on her, and basically he was crushed by a young little Jewish woman. So the devil hates Mary. And it was when we were going through what's called scrutinies. It's towards the end of the process of being initiated into the church. So the whole process is from about August, September to Easter, which this case was the end of April. And so we were going through what's called scrutinies, which are a month or two before Easter. And it's a series of small exorcisms, but that's kind of beside the point. But things were really starting to get a little heated spiritually, where my mom and I both experienced this when we came together and talked about it, where we were kind of in a state of desolation. We're in the bottom of the night, home run stretch. We've got to pull through. And God was wanting us to show how devoted we were to becoming Catholic and followers of Christ. And it felt like Mary, for me, was off limits. Like, I was in trouble. I was in timeout. She didn't want to talk to me. And it was mainly because, again, God basically willed her back. Like, no, he needs time alone. And so it's like, okay, and the enemy was kind of twisting this in my head to where it felt like I was in timeout. I did something wrong. I messed up. I wasn't worthy anymore. Like, I had upset her. It was just little things of like this, and I was still trying to pray this and that, pray with her, but just felt really down in the dumps. And then one day I was sitting there, I was putting my boys to bed. I was just sitting there thinking, and it was like, the way I put it is, there's like puzzle pieces were thrown at me, and all of it came together, and it spelled, Mary doesn't love you. And I laughed because that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. And at that point, I realized what was going on, that the enemy was trying to separate me from Mary. Because if he could separate me from the one that was helping me, the one that he hated so much, then he could possibly get me back in his grasp. Because the only reason he wants to take souls is to anger God and upset God, and to just make us suffer because he hates us so much, the enemy does. But that'll be a different thing. You'll probably hear about that in one of my interviews coming up, Evangelized by Demons, with one of our priests, our local exorcist. But again, I saw this. It said, Mary doesn't love you. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She wants the salvation of everyone, and it's not like I'm going for hookers and cocaine. I was going to OCIA. I was going to Mass very regularly. I was praying regularly, reading regularly. And so I knew I had to upset her. I couldn't think of anything. And so all that went away as soon as I realized what the enemy was doing. They're like cockroaches. Once the light is shed on them, they just go to the corners and hide. They don't like that. And so then the rest was kind of home free from there. Like I said, there was a lot of spiritual experiences, and quite honestly, in Catholicism and even those non-Catholic Christians that are devout as well, the spiritual experiences are very common. I talk to others that are even a bit devout, and we talk about hearing God, hearing Mary, hearing saints, and also hearing the enemy, fighting the enemy, and just different things that happen, different physical things that happen in our world. So it's definitely not uncommon. And again, like I started, I, like others, thought it was all superficial, but no, it's actually deeply spiritual. And it's not just spiritual to make me feel good. It's spiritual and understanding where we fit in the puzzle of the woven fabric of the universe. And so we all have a place, and God is just waiting for us to reach out. And I hope hearing about the spiritual experiences shows a side that maybe you hadn't heard, or confirms something you had, or helps build upon a foundation that you may have had. And I also want to note that God is a fountain, not a vending machine. So it's not, oh, I pray the rosary, I get this. I've prayed the rosary almost every day since then, and yeah, I don't shed tears pretty much ever. I pray the Seven Sorrows Rosary almost every night, and sometimes I have really, really good moments where it's like God's grace is there, and sometimes it's just trudging through. But if you don't trudge through stuff, you're not going to be there on the other side when you get the beautiful moments where God is really deeply present. He's always present, but where you are, everything comes together, where you are open, you are humble, and you are just there with God. You can't necessarily get into it seeking spiritual consolation. Like I said, you'll likely receive it at some point or another in different ways. We all have different charisms, we fit in different ways in the mystical body of Christ as members of the church. And you'll get something, maybe, probably. But the biggest thing is being humble before God. It's a weird thing with humility. The moment you think you're humble, you're prideful. The moment you realize you're prideful, you're humble. It's kind of like playing the game. We all just lost the game. We all thought of the game. So you've just got to humbly approach God. You've got to want a relationship with Him. You can even say, Lord God, I want to believe you exist. I want to believe in this stuff. Please give me faith. Just repeat that over and over. Look into other prayers. Learn who God is through Scripture. Reach out to Him. Learn who He is so you know how to talk to Him through prayer. There's various ways to reach out to God. One of the biggest things I learned during my theological and spiritual development into the faith is no matter what, we're all choosing a side. There's no fence sitting. It's black and white. There's no gray. You're either with God or you're not. Because when you start learning how the enemy works through pride, lust, greed, envy, sloth, all of it, and you start seeing what you're grappling with, you start realizing how the enemy's working to pull you into his side. Even if you don't want to be there, even if you'd rather be on the good guys team, the enemy's still trying to pull you in. He does it to me every day, does it to everyone. We're all sinners, we all fall, but we all have to keep working and pull ourselves up and keep going towards the highest good. But like I say, you're on a side. You may think you're not fighting, you may think none of this exists, but you're on a side. And so I challenge you to challenge your own spiritual experiences. I am very confident you've had at least one or more that you're at least halfway aware of. Reflect on your life. Think about those coincidences. Once you realize they're not just coincidences, things change. You start realizing there's something else going on. And with all that, I hope it's constructive for you. I hope it helps you develop spiritually. I hope it helps you grow close to God. And I will always pray for you, that God may keep you, bless you, and guide you